She thought she knew exactly what she was getting into. A cold transaction, a means to an end, a marriage built on nothing but desperation and dollar signs. But when Rachel Bennett discovered the truth about the man she married for money, it wasn't his wealth that shocked her. It was the secret that would change everything she thought she knew about love, sacrifice, and what it means to truly see someone. This is her story. The rain hammered against the hospital window like it was trying to break through, each drop a reminder of how fast everything was falling apart. Rachel stood there, staring at her mother's frail body connected to machines that beeped with mechanical precision, keeping her alive one breath at a time. The doctor's words still echoed in her mind. Stage 4 kidney failure. 6 months, maybe less, without a transplant. The cost? $280,000. Rachel was 28 years old, working 2 jobs as a medical assistant and a weekend barista, pulling in maybe $42,000 a year before taxes. She had $1,700 in her savings account. The math was cruel and simple. There was no way. Her mother, the woman who had raised her alone after her father disappeared when Rachel was 6, who had worked doubles at the diner to keep a roof over their heads, who had never once complained even when the electricity got shut off, was going to die because Rachel couldn't save her. The guilt was suffocating. She hadn't spoken to her stepfather Richard in 3 years, not since he married that woman, Patricia, just 8 months after her mother's divorce was finalized. But desperate times. Rachel swallowed her pride and called. The meeting was at some upscale restaurant in Manhattan that probably charged $30 for a salad. Richard looked uncomfortable the moment she started explaining, shifting in his seat, checking his watch. Patricia, his new wife, barely looked up from her phone. Then Patricia said something that made Rachel's blood run cold. "We'll pay for everything. All of it. The surgery, the post-op care, the medications. Everything." Rachel's heart leaped. Then Patricia continued. "But there's a condition. Our family friend, Thomas Sterling, needs a wife for his inheritance. His grandfather's trust requires him to be married before he can access the funds. It's a business arrangement. You marry him, we pay your mother's bills. Simple as that." Rachel felt the air leave her lungs. "You want me to marry a stranger for money?" Patricia finally looked up, her eyes cold and calculating. "I want you to make a choice. Your pride or your mother's life. What's it going to be?" Rachel met Thomas Sterling 3 days later at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. She expected some arrogant Wall Street type in an expensive suit, probably older, definitely entitled. What she got was a man who looked like he'd just rolled out of bed. Faded jeans, a wrinkled t-shirt with a coffee stain, sneakers that had seen better days. He was late, which annoyed her immediately. When he finally showed up, he didn't apologize. He just slid into the booth across from her and said, "So, you're the one who needs money." His voice was flat, almost bored. Rachel bristled. "And you're the one who needs a wife. Looks like we both need something." Thomas studied her for a moment, his dark eyes unreadable. He wasn't unattractive, she had to admit. Strong jawline, thick dark hair that fell carelessly across his forehead, the kind of face that would be handsome if it wasn't set in such a permanent scowl. But there was something else there too. Something tired. Something sad. "This is purely business," he said finally. "We get married. I get my inheritance. You get your money. We live separate lives. When it's done, we divorce. Clean and simple." Rachel nodded. "How long? A year? Maybe 2. My grandfather's trust has some clauses about maintaining the marriage for a minimum period." Fine. They shook hands across the table. His grip was firm but not aggressive. Just practical. Like everything else about this arrangement. The wedding was small, just the 2 of them and a courthouse judge. No flowers, no music, no pretense of romance. Rachel wore a simple blue dress she already owned. Thomas wore the same wrinkled clothes from their coffee shop meeting. When the judge asked if they took each other as husband and wife, they both said, "I do," with all the enthusiasm of people filling out tax forms. Patricia transferred the first payment that afternoon. Rachel's mother had her surgery 3 days later. The apartment Thomas provided was in a decent neighborhood in Queens, nothing fancy, but clean and furnished. He had made it clear he wouldn't be there much. He had his own place, he said, somewhere he actually lived. This was just for appearances, in case anyone checked. Rachel didn't argue. The less time they spent together, the better. The first month was exactly what she expected. Loneliness. She'd wake up in an empty apartment, go to work, come home to silence. Thomas showed up maybe twice, always unannounced, always leaving within an hour. Once to grab some documents he'd left. Once because his lawyer needed proof they were cohabitating. They barely spoke beyond logistics. Rachel visited her mother every day. The surgery had gone well, and watching her mother's color return, seeing her smile again, made everything worth it. Even this hollow excuse for a marriage. Even the shame that gnawed at her in quiet moments when she thought about what she'd done. She had sold herself. Not her body maybe, but her life, her future, her chance at real love. All for money. Her best friend, Jessica, knew the truth. And every time they talked, she could hear the judgment in Jessica's voice, even though Jessica tried to hide it. "Are you okay?" Jessica would ask. "I'm fine," Rachel would lie. "It's temporary. It's just business." But at night, alone in that apartment, Rachel would wonder what kind of person she'd become. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The change started small. Thomas began showing up more often. Not every day, but a couple times a week. At first, Rachel thought it was just part of maintaining the illusion. But then she noticed something strange. He'd bring groceries. Not expensive stuff, just basics. Milk, bread, eggs, coffee. Things she needed but hadn't asked for. When she questioned him about it, he shrugged. "You're my wife, technically. Figured you shouldn't starve." His tone was gruff, dismissive, but something about the gesture made Rachel pause. Then he started staying longer. An hour became 2. 2 became 3. They'd sit in the living room, him on the couch with his laptop, her in the armchair with a book, existing in the same space without really interacting. But it was different than being alone. One evening, about 6 weeks into the marriage, Rachel was cooking dinner when Thomas walked in. She wasn't expecting him. The apartment smelled like garlic and tomatoes. She was making pasta, her mother's recipe. "Smells good," Thomas said, hovering in the kitchen doorway. Rachel glanced back at him. "Thanks. There's plenty if you want some." She didn't know why she offered. It just came out. Thomas hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, okay." They ate in silence at first, but then Thomas asked about her day. Not in a polite, checking a box kind of way. He actually listened when she talked about the difficult patient at the clinic, the woman who'd broken down crying because she couldn't afford her medication. Rachel found herself talking more than she'd planned, and Thomas, surprisingly, understood. He got it. The frustration, the helplessness of watching people suffer because of money. "System's broken," he said quietly. "Has been for a long time." "You sound like you've thought about this a lot," Rachel said. Thomas looked down at his plate. "Yeah, I have." That was the first real conversation they'd had. It wouldn't be the last. Over the next few months, something shifted between them. Thomas started coming by every few days, then almost every evening. They'd cook together, watch movies, talk about everything from politics to childhood memories to their worst fears. Rachel learned that Thomas had grown up poor, really poor, in a trailer park in Ohio. His mother had been a single parent, working 3 jobs to keep them afloat. When he was 16, she died from a heart attack. No health insurance, no savings, no way to pay for the treatment that might have saved her. He bounced around foster care for 2 years before aging out of the system at 18. "I lived out of my car for 8 months, Thomas told her one night, his voice steady but his eyes distant. "Worked construction during the day, slept in parking lots at night. Saved every penny I could. Eventually got into community college on a scholarship, then transferred to Columbia. Worked my way through, graduated with honors. Started in tech, built a couple of apps that took off. Sold them for decent money. Built it up from there." Rachel stared at him. "Wait, you built your own money?" "I thought the inheritance. The inheritance is from my grandfather. My biological father's father. I never even met the man until 3 years ago." Thomas's jaw tightened. "My father left before I was born. Never came back. Never cared. Then one day, this lawyer shows up telling me my grandfather wants to meet me. Turns out my father died in a car accident, and I'm the only heir. But there's a catch. The old man has very specific ideas about family and legacy. I have to be married to access the trust. Something about proving I'm stable, committed, not going to blow the money on stupid stuff. How much money are we talking about? Rachel asked carefully. Thomas met her eyes. $42 million. The number hung in the air between them like something physical. Rachel felt her stomach drop. $42 million. She'd married him for $42 million. Or rather, she'd married him so his stepmother would pay her mother's medical bills. But still, the scale of it was dizzying. I don't want it, Thomas said quietly. The money. Yeah, I mean, I'll take it, but only to do something with it. Something that matters. My mother died because she couldn't afford health care. Thousands of people die every year for the same reason. I want to start a foundation. Free clinics, grant programs for medical expenses, advocacy for policy change. Use the money the way it should have been used all along. To actually help people. Rachel felt something crack open inside her chest. This man, this stranger she'd married for practical reasons, was carrying around the same pain she was. The same anger at a system that measured human life in dollars and cents. Why didn't you tell me this before? She asked. Thomas looked away. Because I didn't trust you. I thought you were like Patricia. Cold. Mercenary. Someone who saw people as transactions. But you're not. You're good, Rachel. You care about people. You see them. I should have trusted you sooner. I'm sorry. That night, after Thomas left, Rachel sat alone in the dark apartment and cried. Not from sadness, but from something she couldn't quite name. Maybe hope. Maybe fear. Maybe both. The more time they spent together, the harder it became to maintain the pretense that this was just business. Rachel caught herself thinking about Thomas at work, wondering what he was doing, looking forward to seeing him later. She noticed the way he smiled when he thought she wasn't looking, the way his voice softened when he talked to her, the way he'd leave little notes around the apartment. Bought more coffee. Don't drink it all before noon. Tea. Your mom called. Said to remind you to eat. She's right. Tea. Left dinner in the fridge. Heat it up. Don't skip meals. Tea. Jessica noticed the change in Rachel too. You're glowing, she said one afternoon over coffee. This fake marriage is looking pretty real from where I'm sitting. Rachel wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. I don't know what's happening, she admitted. We're not supposed to feel anything. It's supposed to be temporary. But Jess, I think I'm falling for him. Does he feel the same way? Rachel shook her head. I don't know. Sometimes I think maybe, but then I remember this whole thing has an expiration date. In a year, we go our separate ways. That was the deal. Deals can change, Jessica said gently. Maybe you should talk to him. But Rachel was terrified. What if she was wrong? What if he didn't feel the same way? What if admitting her feelings ruined the fragile thing they'd built? So she stayed silent, holding her feelings close like a secret she couldn't share. 8 months into the marriage, everything fell apart. Rachel came home from work early one day and found Thomas sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and his head in his hands. He looked devastated. Thomas? What's wrong? He looked up at her, and the pain in his eyes made her chest tighten. My grandfather died 2 days ago. The lawyers just informed me. Rachel moved closer, instinct overriding hesitation. She touched his shoulder gently. I'm so sorry. Thomas laughed, but it was bitter, hollow. I barely knew him. Met him maybe 5 times total. But still, it's strange. He was the only family I had left, even if it was complicated. What happens now? With the inheritance, the trust is released. I'll have access to the full amount in about 6 weeks, once the estate is settled. He paused, then added quietly, which means we can get divorced. That was the deal. I get the inheritance, you get your money. We're done. The words hit Rachel like a physical blow. Done. Of course. That had always been the plan. She'd known this was coming. But knowing it and feeling it were two completely different things. Right? She said, keeping her voice carefully neutral. Makes sense. Thomas looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Is that what you want? Yes, she thought. No, she thought. I don't know, she thought. What she said was, it's what we agreed on. Thomas nodded slowly, then closed his laptop. I should go. I have meetings with the lawyers tomorrow. Start getting everything sorted. He left without another word. Rachel stood in the empty kitchen and felt her heart break for the second time in her life. The first time had been watching her mother in that hospital bed. This time was somehow worse. The next 3 weeks were torture. Thomas stopped coming by. He texted occasionally, just logistics about legal paperwork and timelines. The apartment felt emptier than ever, and Rachel found herself walking through it like a ghost, remembering conversations they'd had in each room, meals they'd shared, moments that had felt real. Her mother, now healthy and vibrant, noticed immediately. "You're in love with him," she said one evening during dinner. Rachel tried to deny it, but her mother gave her that look, the one that said she could see straight through any lie. "I didn't mean to," Rachel whispered. "It just happened." "Does he know?" "No, and it doesn't matter. This was always temporary. I married him for money, Mom, so you could live. How can something real grow from something so transactional?" Her mother reached across the table and took Rachel's hand. "Baby girl, love doesn't care about how it starts. It only cares about where it goes. And sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. But you have to be brave enough to fight for it. What if he doesn't feel the same way? What if he does?" Rachel thought about that conversation for days. What if he does? The question haunted her. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday afternoon via courier. Rachel sat on the couch staring at them, a pen in her hand, unable to make herself sign. This was it. The end of the story. She got what she needed. Her mother was alive and healthy. She'd even saved some money from the payments Patricia had made. She could move on, start fresh, maybe eventually find someone to love who hadn't started as a business transaction. But her hand wouldn't move. Because the truth was, she didn't want to move on. She wanted Thomas. The complicated, damaged, beautiful man who brought her groceries and listened to her problems and carried his mother's death like a wound that had never quite healed. She wanted mornings together and arguments about what to watch on TV and a future that wasn't mapped out in legal documents. She wanted real. Rachel called Jessica. "I need to tell him. I need to tell Thomas how I feel." "About damn time," Jessica said. "When?" "Now. Tonight. Before I lose my nerve." She drove to Thomas's real apartment, the one he mentioned but never actually let her see. It was in a modest building in Brooklyn, nothing like what she'd expected from someone about to inherit $42 million. She knocked on the door, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Thomas answered, and the surprise on his face would have been comical if Rachel wasn't so terrified. "Rachel? What are you doing here?" "I got the divorce papers," she said. "I know. I haven't signed them." "I haven't signed them either." They stared at each other. Thomas stepped back. "You should come in." The apartment was small but comfortable, filled with books and plants and photographs. Rachel saw a picture on the wall of a young woman with kind eyes and Thomas's smile. His mother. "I need to tell you something," Rachel said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "And I know this isn't what we agreed on, and I know this complicates everything, but I can't sign those papers without being honest. Thomas, I fell in love with you. I don't know when it happened or how, but it did. And I know you probably don't feel the same way, and that's okay, but I needed you to know, because I can't end this marriage without telling you the truth." Thomas was silent for so long that Rachel wanted to disappear into the floor. Then he laughed, not cruelly, but with something like relief mixed with disbelief. "You think I don't feel the same way?" he said. "Rachel, I've been in love with you for months. Since that night you made your mother's pasta. Since I watched you care about your patients even when they couldn't pay. Since I realized you saw me as a person, not a meal ticket or a means to an end. I've been terrified to tell you because I thought you only married me out of desperation, and I didn't want to trap you in something you never really wanted." Rachel felt tears streaming down her face. "You love me?" "God, yes. I love you so much it terrifies me." They stood there in Thomas's small living room, two people who had started as strangers bound by desperation and legal documents, who had somehow, impossibly, found something real in the middle of a transaction. Thomas crossed the space between them and cupped Rachel's face in his hands. "I don't want a divorce," he said softly. "I want a real marriage. With you. If that's what you want too." "It is," Rachel whispered. "It's all I want." When he kissed her, it felt like coming home. like finding something she didn't know she'd been searching for her entire life. They tore up the divorce papers that night. It felt symbolic and slightly dramatic, and they both laughed as the pieces scattered across Thomas's floor like confetti. 6 months later, Thomas launched the Sterling Foundation for Medical Access. The first clinic opened in the neighborhood where he'd lived in his car all those years ago. Rachel worked there 3 days a week, using her medical assistant training to help people who reminded her of her mother, of Thomas's mother, of everyone who'd ever been told their life wasn't worth saving because they couldn't afford it. They moved into a new apartment together, a real home that belonged to both of them. Nothing fancy, nothing pretentious. Just a place where they could be themselves, where love had enough room to grow. Patricia tried to cause trouble once, claiming the marriage had been fraudulent from the start. But the lawyers shut that down quickly. The marriage had been legal. What happened after was nobody's business but theirs. Rachel's mother was there at their second wedding, the real one. The one with flowers and music and 2 people who chose each other not out of desperation, but out of love. When the officiant asked if they took each other as husband and wife, they said, "I do," with all the conviction of people who meant it with their whole hearts. Thomas whispered in Rachel's ear as they walked back down the aisle, "Thank you for marrying me for money. It gave me the courage to marry you for love." Rachel laughed through happy tears. "Best business decision I ever made." What would you have done in Rachel's place? Could you have married someone you didn't love to save someone you did? And when would you have admitted your feelings? After 3 months? 6? Or would you have let fear keep you silent? Think about the people in your life you'd sacrifice for. Think about the person you'd want standing beside you when everything falls apart. Sometimes love finds us in the most unexpected places. Sometimes it starts with a transaction and ends with a truth. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we changed our minds. Rachel and Thomas built something beautiful from something broken. They took a marriage that was supposed to be temporary, hollow, meaningless, and turned it into a foundation strong enough to build a life on. Because love isn't about how it starts. It's about where it goes. And there's went somewhere neither of them expected. Somewhere real. If this story touched you, if it made you think about second chances and unexpected love and the courage it takes to be vulnerable, leave a comment below. Share your thoughts. Have you ever made a decision out of desperation that turned into something beautiful? Have you ever found love where you least expected it? And if you want to hear more stories about real people facing impossible choices, about lives that took unexpected turns, about love that defied the odds, click that subscribe button. Because every week, we bring you true stories that will make you think, feel, and maybe see your own life a little differently. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community where we celebrate the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of being human. Until next time, remember that sometimes the best things in life come from the choices we make when we have no choice at all.